Good morning. My name is Angie Banks, and I am the Chief Financial Officer for the St. Louis Public School District. This is our fiscal year 24 budget forum. I will be reviewing the revenue budgets for next fiscal year, which is fiscal year 2023-2024. Now, some have asked, why only revenue budgets? That is a great question. We have provided preliminary expenditure budgets in former budget forums. However, this year, our revenue budgets are not ready. They're not complete, as we're still working on those. And we thought this would be a great opportunity to get early feedback from the community. We've even had some comments in the past that, why are you having a budget forum after you have already built your budget? So we're looking forward to some new and innovative ideas from the community. So, our financial objectives. Of course, we go through these quite often, and basically they are to maintain full accreditation, to align closely with the transformation plan, which is 4.0, to maintain long-term financial stability, and also to reinforce high expectations and accountability both for students and for staff. I know there has been a lot of conversation over the years regarding our growing fund balance. Our current fund balance policy is to maintain a minimum of 30%. We're currently at about 47%, and a lot of that is due to strong financial stewardship, in addition to much of the federal funds that have come to districts since the pandemic, or our ESSER funds. Some of these funds are offsetting some of our standard spending and helping to grow our fund balance. Of course, the district is not alone. Many school districts across Missouri and across the country are also finding themselves with increasing fund balances, which is a good thing. Of course, we also have Prop S funding. That will be, if you didn't hear, yesterday was our Prop S Day, where we actually sold our $135 million of Prop S funds. So that was very exciting. So, on to our fund categories. These are the major revenue fund categories and the percentages of the revenue budget. I think everyone is very familiar with our general operating budget, which is about 70% of the overall revenues, with property and sales taxes representing the majority of the general operating budget. Of course, we have many grant funds representing 23% of the revenue budget, and they are broken into local, state, and federal grants. Title funds are usually the heavyweights in our grant funds, but since ESSER's arrival, they are now representing a larger percentage of our federal grants. Debt service represents 7%, and the debt service funds are used to pay the principal and interest on our outstanding bonds. Of course, our Prop S, or Series 2023 bond funds, were issued yesterday and sold, as I just mentioned. You may have also heard about the district's first underlying credit rating from S&P, which we were awarded a AA- credit rating. This rating was due in large part to our financial management, fund balance policy, and our level of resources. So that is a really broad picture of our revenue categories. Just a little bit on our expenditure initiatives. We have already included a 3% salary increase in our expenditures based on the negotiated rate that we have with Local 420. Our GOB school discretionary model, or the expenditures for the school-based budgets, we are using a weighted student formula this year, similar to what we did with our ESSER II funds that were distributed to the schools. And our weights will be on IEP or SPED, our English language learner population, and our homeless or SIT students. Again, our Prop S general obligation bonds, or Series 2023 bonds, we will begin spending some of that $135 million this year, probably up to about $20 million. I know there's been an opportunity over the years and even recently on how we spend these various funds. So this will be another opportunity to provide input on all the various categories of funds, and we look forward to hearing it both on ESSER, Prop S, general operating, and whatever other grants that you may be interested in. So as you look at the preliminary 2024 revenue budgets by category in comparison to the fiscal year 2023 projected totals and the fiscal year 2023 approved budgets, you can see that fiscal year 2024 actually will be decreasing by about $150 million, and that is due primarily to the sale of those Proposition S bond funds, which happened yesterday. There's also a slight decrease in our general operating revenues anticipated. That's primarily due to state revenue. And those are really just the largest differences. Obviously, there's still quite a bit of work to do in the current year, so some of these fiscal year 2023 revenue projections and the 2024 preliminary revenue projections may change by the time we present the budget. This is just a graphic of the revenues for fiscal year 2024 by source. You can see that the largest source of funds is local at 71%. 58% of our local revenue comes from property and sales taxes. And you can see that federal is the second largest category. So what are we doing with our expenditure budgets? I'll kind of give you an outline of where we are and what we have left to do. Our cabinet level general operating budget workbooks were distributed in January, and they were due in February. This information includes their typical expenditures, non-salary expenditures, and all their various categories, where they make adjustments to what they think they'll need for the upcoming year, including their various contracts. As I mentioned, the school budget, discretionary budgets that we're using, the weighted student formulas, we'll be working on that this month. We'll be pulling together all of the staffing reviews for central office and the schools. Some of that was completed in December. Adjustments will be made and reviewed during this month. Our debt and grant allocations and estimates will also be working on this year. Many of the ESSER plans that were made earlier in the year, some of them have come to fruition. Some of the things are still outstanding, so there is still much work to do. You may be aware that ESSER 2 deadline is this year. So the deadline for spending for the schools is March 31st. So we're trying to get in as much as we can to complete that funding and meet those deadlines. ESSER 3 deadline is next year, 2024, so a similar timeline, and we still have funds to spend. So that is a great opportunity to provide some input if you're looking for an opportunity where we may be able to make some changes. So between all of these things, the Finance Office will be working with the various departments and school leaders to pull the information so that we can submit a budget to the board at the April meeting. Of course, we'll be looking for your input so that we can build something into the budgets as appropriate and have discussions with the cabinet level and other leaders of the district. I did want to talk a little bit about some spending considerations. When we think about our priorities, I think we can all agree that academics is number one. What's going to impact the teaching and learning and student performance is very key to the decisions that we will make. We all know that high-quality staff with competitive salaries and compensation is key to have good teaching and learning. Also, operational efficiency and effectiveness is key to help support the schools so that they don't have to spend so much time on operational items and can spend their focus on academics. All these things will be considered with budgets that are being submitted, your input and ideas, and we have to make sure that everything is strategic, sustainable, and equitable. As we think about the strategic nature of building our budgets, that long-term financial sustainability, which is a key metric that we use, we have to really balance our declining enrollment, which we know that means declining state and federal revenue. So we really continue to work on how do we continue to attract students and families back to the district. And we can certainly use your input and your support in this area. We know that costly building, maintenance, and excess capacity is a drain on the budget. So how do we balance that with all the things that we would like to do? You've probably all heard about potential economic downturns and legislative issues that can also impact our budget negatively. One of the things that we were sure to prevent is using one-time money for ongoing costs. Many districts, or at least some districts, are struggling with that with the ESSER funds, as they have used ESSER funds to hire additional staff, and as the funds are now, towards the deadline, what do you do with the staff that were hired? So we make it a practice to try to prevent this one-time funding for ongoing costs. I think everyone is aware of the elementary reading teachers that we have had over the last several years due to a state grant. I believe there were 30 to 35 elementary teachers that have been in place for the last couple years, and we're not sure if that funding is going to be renewed. So that is a consideration as we are building the budget. What happens with that staff? So those are just some topics that we are considering as we're putting together the budgets, and we certainly want to hear what are your recommendations, your thought, your feedback, so that we can implement or at least discuss things that we may do differently or better. So where are we in this process? Of course, we're at the budget forum now, and I've mentioned that the online comment period is through the rest of March, where we will be monitoring your input, answering any questions, and we plan to build the budget and propose to the board at the April 11th board meeting, looking forward to approval on May 9th. So, again, we certainly welcome your input, want you to feel like you're a part of the process, so please enter information into the chat or other feedback opportunities that are available so that your voice can be heard. Thank you very much. I believe we did have one comment. We have two comments.
Yes, we have two questions/comments. The first one reads as such: where can we learn more about how the weighted allocations to schools by IEP, ELL, and SIT? Excited to learn about this approach.
Great question. So, I know that in several of our ESSER communications, when we were building the budgets, we used a weighted student formula, very similar to what we're talking about for GLB. There are presentations where we showed exactly what those weightings were, and we will post more information into, I'm not exactly where our comments are posted, but we will provide more information. But I can tell you that basically, from a preliminary standpoint, our GLB budgets were built around each student receiving, or each school receiving funding based on their student population. I believe last year it was based on $200 per student, and that's how we built the discretionary budget amount. This year, what we're considering is weighting that $200 per student and adding an additional 12.5% weight if the student is on an IEP, if the student is considered homeless, or ELL. And even if a student may fall into multiple categories, you could have multiple weightings. So this is a way to provide additional funding for schools that have higher populations so that they can provide additional resources to support those students. But again, we will provide additional information on our plan.
Thank you. The next question: is there coordination between SLPS budget and SLPS foundation spending, or are those separate processes?
That's a great question as well. And certainly, SLPS, we have our own budget. The foundation is considered a component unit of St. Louis Public Schools. They do provide funding for specific programs for the district, so they may provide and I'll just make up an example, $250,000 to support Program A. They would therefore give those funds to the district. We would set up a grant, and we would spend those funds on that program, which were provided by the foundation. So we do meet with the foundation to make sure that our programs are aligned and everything is in order. So yes, there is differences in the budgets, but there can be some collaboration on who is actually spending those resources. Some of the resources are spent directly for the programs from the foundation, and sometimes those funds are forwarded to the district, and we spend those funds through the district grant.
Thank you. Here is a comment. It reads as such: please bring back the salary steps or consider a larger raise. The 3% raise is not even covering the current inflation. I almost can't afford to work at SLPS anymore, and this is the case with many others. I hope this changes, otherwise me and others will have to find elsewhere to work, and SLPS will be even worse off with less teachers. As a third-year teacher, I am making the same amount as a first-year teacher, and the only reason I make even a slight bit more is because of my master's in education.
Well, thank you for that comment. I can't say that that's the first time that we've had a similar comment. We know that competitive salaries has been a concern for many years. We were pleased to be able to offer an 8% increase this fiscal year, in addition to some other increases in various positions. So we are well aware of the concerns about our salary. We are certainly working to be more competitive, and we would ask you to please hold on. Please consider us your home as we try to make things better for all of us. But again, we are trying to make sure that we can sustainably maintain the programs that are necessary. Oftentimes you have to give up something to get something, and those are the things that we're looking at to make sure to make the best decisions for the district. But thank you for that comment.
The next question reads, how does the district find grants?
Great question. Well, many of our grants are entitlement grants that we just received, like Title I, Comprehensive, and so forth. But our Office of Institutional Advancement is a primary way that we identify grants. There are grant writers that go out seeking grants. Principals and staff also identify grants that they're interested in. So there are a number of ways that grants are identified. Of course, everything is always vetted through, does this align with the district's strategic initiatives? So if you have an idea for a grant, please reach out to the Office of Institutional Advancement for support. Thank you.
No further questions or comments at this time.
Well, we will certainly hold on for a while. So if you do have some feedback or comments or questions, please enter them and we will be happy to respond. If not now, continue to provide that feedback throughout the month of March, and we will follow up with our responses.
To our guests, the website for feedback is www.slps.org/feedback. Thank you.